What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the NG Models August 2025 releases. Yes, I know I said August instead of July because originally NG had announced this as a July release, but they took a little over 8 days to formally release everything, so I'm not sure what was up with the delay, but I feel like it took them very long. But anyway, back to the hints for July. We've got both 1 to 400 and 1 to 200 included in this release. To start off, we have 3 A330s, a 737-800, 747-400, 777-200ER, 777-300ER, 787-9, 787-10, and you'll note that there were initially 2 TriStars, but that latter hint with the Chinese registration, that was posted in error, so that was quickly omitted from subsequent postings of this hint list, and we're down to just 1 TriStar. So the only duplicate aircraft type that we should have would be the A330 with the 3 different registrations, a Chinese one, Indonesian, and South Korean. And then as for the 1 to 200 hints, if I can find them here on the model airliner form, they get kind of buried because these threads, there's a lot of discussion currently with NG, and I'll certainly hit up at that a little bit at the end of the video, since there's been a couple really good videos that have come out lately about the current situation with NG's releases. But if we take a look at the 1 to 200 hints, there are several 737s. Actually, the entire release batch is 737s. We have 5 of the 700s, 2 800s, 1 900, and 3 MAX 8s. And you'll note that all but 3 of them are North American, more specifically of the US. So that certainly brought up some interesting discussions on if the whole tariff situations are really affecting NG's output of US releases, if they're just more so shifting to 1 to 200 scale or what. But then again, if it were something like that, then why didn't the shift happen beforehand when people started noticing a change in NG's releases? But like I said, I'll get to a little bit more of that at the end of the video because there's certainly a lot to discuss. And I'd like to make my own video on it because the several videos that have been posted in reference to this situation are very interesting. And I'd certainly love to kind of get in on that discussion and provide my 2 cents on it, if you will. Okay, so NG website time. And let's see what they have to offer for us for August. And starting off, we have a Garuda Indonesia A330-300 here. This is the Pikachu livery, or one of the many Pokemon jets. This is Pikachu Jet GA-2, so I'm guessing that's Garuda Indonesia, like their second one or something. And then we have another one down here with a different registration and just the standard livery. I think it's been a little while since they've done one of those, so I'll give them a pass on that. A third A330, this is with a Hana Travel Go Card sticker, so I'm not very familiar with that. A 4th A330 for Garuda Indonesia. Yeah, this is kind of one of the airlines they like to give a lot of love to, so there's another one that's just the same livery. Yeah, just a different registration. So you can see they're choosing several different registrations here. And as always, we stick in a lot of last-minute releases. This is the China Southern A350, the first for this airline. So not too surprised that they like to add in a bunch of releases last minute. I did kind of skim through the list briefly, and I noticed there's a lot more than what they initially unveiled in the hint, so this will be kind of a long video. There's another China Southern A350 here, just with a different registration. Then we have a blank A350 freighter, so you can do a custom on it or whatever. Slightly longer than the A350-900, but I think it's a little shorter than the A350-1000, and there it is. So this is where NG gets a pass, at least from an American collector's perspective. This is the Minnesota Golden Gopher 738. So I will be picking this up at some point. I don't have any money on me right now, so I can't buy any models. But hopefully later on when I financially recover, this will be one of the models that I do end up getting. So moving on, we have a China Southern 7879. This is the 787th built 787. So it has that special livery. And then another China Southern 78. This is with a slightly different livery, but the first 789 for China Southern. And moving down, we have a Xiaomi 737-700. This is in the older livery. And this is our 1 to 200 releases, by the way, so we'll see how many they duplicate over here and how many of the American releases end up showing up here. There's another old livery, but this one with winglets. And then here's Southwest, a heart livery. This does have the splits, 1 to 200. Hopefully this will still have the good color, because the 1 to 200 Southwest they did before had the good color. Hopefully it stays that way here. Another one pops up. Here's another Southwest with the blended winglets. And then a China Southern. This is the Yunnan Peacock with the orange variant. And then a second orange variant, but this is a different registration, it looks like. And that will certainly be the case. Here's a Delta 737-700. Delta had like 10 of these, but they got rid of them during the pandemic since they didn't really fit well with the fleet. The only route I remember them seen on were like Atlanta to Key West, which is now flown by the A319s. Then a One World American Airlines 738. This is 973 Alpha November this time. And then a Delta 738. Here's the one with the splits. That'll be very nice. Another Delta. This is a 739. 851 Delta November, also with splits. China Southern up next. 738. Just a standard livery here. And then a second one as well. This one has a different registration. If the photo will load here. There we go. And then here's an American, and it looks like they mislabeled the registrations with the Chinese registration prefix, and the photos are not loading for me right now, so that's why the screen is dimming but not showing anything. So, okay, they must not have the photos up. Okay, actually they do. It just takes a minute, but there you go. So it does have the correct registration on the CGI. So they did 2 MAX 8s, 306 Romeo Charlie and 327 Sierra Kilo. And then there's a Xiamen Air MAX 8 with the current livery. There we go. I don't know why the photos are taking a little while to load here. I don't know if it's my internet or what. But there is a second MAX 8 for Xiamen Air, just a different registration. Then we have a couple Comex C919s in here. This is the 1 to 200 and NG Light release. This is the first of the type for China Southern. So they're giving China Southern a lot of love with like the first aircraft type for this airline. Really observant there. Back to some 1 to 400s now. We have a couple of 777-300ERs. This is China Eastern. Should just be a standard livery, but again, as you can tell, the photos are not working with me today. There we go. Ooh, that's a very... that fills up the screen. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to close out of this. It's going to screw something up here, so sorry about that. Okay, let's get reset. And the second one, kind of the same thing, really, so there you go. Images are very high quality on these 333s. Like, I've noticed the CGIs for all the other aircraft are very kind of low quality. Comac ARJ21, or formerly what it was, this is the C909 now. This one has... It's very, like, empty. There's not a whole lot of detail, so I'm presuming that's an NG Light release, but it doesn't say on there. So I don't know if that's just kind of how the livery is or what, but the prices are really low. $15.99 and $16.99. What's going on there? That's a very interesting pricing scheme there, but I'm guessing, I'm just going to assume that both this and, of course, this, yeah, it does look like an NG Light. Sorry about the cropping there. Yeah, that does look like an NG Light to me, so we'll just keep moving. There's even more here. Good Lord, this is a huge release. Juniao Air 789. This one is the Blossoming China special livery. And there is another one as well, just a different registration. Couple Korean Air new liveries. So here's the 7810, if that photo will load. But we all know this new livery very well. And then the A330-300 here as well. Hopefully they do 748, but I know Phoenix and I think JC and then HX models, they've all released it. So I will pick up one of those at some point since I did see that in Atlanta. Back to 1 to 200s now, a China Southern MAX 8. A couple of them actually, one with a different registration, but this is the first MAX 8 for China Southern. And then another Yunnan Peacock A330 for China Eastern. This is the A330-300. And here's a Stargazer. So this is one of the future releases that they announced. So we knew this one was coming eventually, but there we go. Have not seen this aircraft in real life, but I've seen all the photos of it and it looks really cool, so maybe I'll get it at some point for novelty. China Southern 777-200ER. And this one is also another 777, but this is the first one introduced for mainland China, December 30th of 1995. And there we go. That is all the releases. So we finally made it through this big old list. But just kind of getting a glimpse of this list and seeing what it all has to offer, you know. There's still some glaring issues with the variety. I mean, there's like no... I mean, I can check again just to make sure, but yeah, I mean, there's no European models this month, so I don't know why European collectors continue to get basically thrown under the bus with NG, because, I mean, when they did the June releases, they didn't have a European hint in there, but after enough collectors made a stink about it on their social media, then they added in that Eurowings A320 is what it ended up being, the some like sports team livery or something, which is better than nothing, I would argue, but it looks like that plane has been delayed, so I don't know what's happening with that. A couple of them have been delayed, actually. The other one was a C-40C in 1-200 that they delayed. But yeah, anyway, very much unfortunate that European collectors have been basically ignored again in this release. But as for the American collectors, you know, there's only like one U.S. release technically in here for 1-400, which is the Golden Gophers. It's a very good choice. It's kind of like that JetBlue Blue Unity 321. The only U.S. release that they do in the batch for 400 scale, but it's a pretty solid release nonetheless. And I should count the Stargazer as well. So technically 2 this month when you factor in the Stargazer aircraft. But, you know, despite the limited American releases, the 2 that they do end up choosing are really good. So I think they still got that nailed down, but obviously we need a better balance of releases. And just to quickly address the videos that have come out, so I'll just briefly mention this. I'd like to make a separate video on this because this is a very interesting topic, and I've been very much intrigued by the discussions that have been happening as a result of this. So Connor, CM Aviation, he released a couple of videos assessing the changing U.S. releases, the shift away from what NG has done previously with U.S. releases. The first video did really well, and then there was a follow-up video to provide more clarity on some remarks that were made in that video and to further elaborate on the whole tariff deal, since that has been a big talking point about why NG has made less U.S. planes as of this year. But the evidence showed that there was definitely a change in U.S. releases before those policies went into effect. And there's been a case made that, you know, NG had some sort of, you know, they had some sort of premonition that there's going to be a change in power and they were going to change their U.S. release strategy. But it does make me question if that's actually true because, you know, do they have a way of knowing what's going on over here in the U.S.? Do they have access to that social media over here? I mean, yes, they have an Instagram and all that, but, I mean, their Facebook has been inactive. I don't even think they use their Twitter page anymore, or X, whatever you want to call it. And they don't have a YouTube presence. They don't have their own official YouTube channel. So it makes me wonder if they have access to Western news outlets, because if they don't, then how can they know what's happening over here and therefore make changes to what they're releasing for U.S. collectors ahead of time? You know, it's kind of like what Connor said in his reaction to the other video that got made, which I'll mention in a second. It's not a matter of like could, more like will. That's kind of what he was getting at. But so as for the other video that was made on the other side of this whole discussion, it was posted by Yesterday's Airlines as of, well, yesterday, technically, from the day this video is going out. And this essentially discussed a different perspective on the whole shifting tides with the U.S. releases and how they've moved away from what has previously worked with them, you know, doing a lot more unique stuff, but now U.S. collectors are seeing a lot of duplicates. And Connor made a very valid point that his videos were more U.S.-centric because that makes up the majority of his audience. So, of course, he's going to make a video that caters to that. And I know he said he wants to make another video that takes a look at this whole situation from a global perspective. So taking a look at other collectors from like Europe, South America, other parts of Asia, because I think even there in Asia, there are some collectors that are getting neglected, like, Japanese collectors. They haven't gotten anything, at least in this release anyway. I can take another look. But yeah, there's no releases from Japan, and I think last month as well was also a bit like that. So just looking back through that list, and yeah, I don't see any Japanese registrations. So there's definitely a lot of regions in this world that NG is just not representing well right now, because they are obviously more catering to a lot of Asian collectors, and more specifically within China, their home country. And from a certain perspective, it makes sense that NG makes a lot of Chinese aircraft. It's their home country. It's where most of their money comes from. So of course they're gonna chase that. But from what I understand, there's also a lot of collectors from there that are not happy with how NG is releasing planes right now. So there's a lot of discussion over there, I'm sure, on the Chinese social media apps, which I don't really have access to. So I'd love to hear more perspectives from there. It's just a matter of, how many more are going to come over to any Western social media outlets and start talking about how they're not happy with NG, with what NG is releasing and how they're releasing it. So, overall, there's a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of different discussions coming together. And it's certainly interesting to follow along and see what others are saying, what others are thinking. But what I will say on the topic of that as well, and I think it's important for me to mention, just because, I feel like a lot of the discussion so far, it has been really civil. There's a lot of different perspectives, and, yes, there are some disagreements. Some people don't exactly agree with everything. That's just how it is. But there does come a time where you do have to draw a line with certain remarks that are being made about a different perspective that maybe perhaps you don't agree with. And I've seen this on the other side, especially. So, if you're calling somebody annoying or calling videos ridiculous, that draws a line, and there's no need to do that. You may not agree with the different perspectives, but there does come a line that needs to be drawn where there's no need to call someone annoying or call a video ridiculous. You may not agree with it, but I don't think that constitutes a reason to call somebody annoying or call a video ridiculous. And that's what I've noticed on the other side. So that's really all I'll say on that. Again, I'd like to make another video that goes more into this topic further, just from my perspective. So I'll certainly pursue that at a later date, especially as we get more data from 2025, because we still have a little under half the year left. So some people have said it's a little too early to draw conclusions for this year as of right now. But as we get more data and evidence, I think now we're kind of reaching a point where we can start to figure out, okay, what can we conclude from 2025? And so far, it hasn't been exactly great. Well, we still got several months left, so we'll certainly see how the rest of this year pans out before we get to that point. So we'll just hold tight. We'll work with what NG's currently pumping out for us, and we'll just keep moving forward. So as for this release, it's okay. There's still some work that needs to be done, but I just am happy that they did make the Golden Gopher 738 for Sun Country, so I will pick that up at some point down the line. I don't know when. I've got to work on getting some money back because the whole trip just completely destroyed my wallet, as I've said many times before. And the 1-200s are nice with the U.S. representation, though it would help if they had some other regions like Europe, Oceania, South America, etc. There's just none of that right now. So I think that really needs to continue to be worked on as we move forward. Regardless of other, external conflicts, I think there will come a time where we can certainly make a big, big, big push to get NG to go back to what worked before, with a pretty good representation of all regions. Maybe not every single region, but at least a majority of the major parts of the world that love these model airplanes. People make such a big deal about it because NG, they have the best hard product with so many types. And when they're not releasing stuff that people want, of course people are going to get upset. It doesn't matter if you're from the US. It doesn't matter if you're from Europe, Oceania, Japan, just to name a few. You know, there's a lot of collectors that are not happy with NG right now with what they're releasing, and there's a lot of universal agreement on that. But like I said, I'll pursue a more in-depth video on this topic because it is a very interesting topic to cover, and I've already passed like 20 minutes on this, and I don't want this to stretch out any longer. So with that said, I'm going to cut the video here, and again, I'll make a further in-depth video on this topic because I think it's very interesting and I like to provide my 2 cents on it. So with that being said, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.